This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by To Get to the Other Side by Kelly Ohlert, which you can add on Goodreads.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I am here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork. And in studio today, remotely, we also have Emmy Nordstrom Higdon, who is the open secret on the podcast now, is my agent at Westward Creative.
What have you gotten yourself into?
Yeah, my condolences for our
newly suffering
agent. That's right.
Hardly suffering, at least.
So far, we haven't been on sub together too long yet, right? So we'll
true.
see. Yeah, well, the tears will be later. Now, Emmy, I'm so glad to have you here because Justin and I have been having conversations in the studio about lots of stuff that I know from your own Twitter feed you're also sort of interested in talking about.
Oh, good.
Just to help people understand, not just the role of the agent, which some are like, ooh, how do I get one? How does it fit? All that. We'll get there, I guess. But one of the things I think would be fun for us all to talk about is a person walks into a bookstore. Sounds like the beginning of a joke. A person walked into a bookstore. They pick a book off the shelf. Can you help illuminate our dear listeners all the hands that touched that book and all the supply chain pieces that went into that book is now theirs?
I hope you're prepared for this to be like a series, because that's one of the things that I feel like I spend my whole life thinking about this all the time, because I'm such a systems thinker, and publishing is so weird and has so many moving parts that it's kind of shocking. I think that, so often, especially in these days with social media and the sort of perception of the author and the book as this, I don't know, object for critique. I think so often the author really bears the whole burden for whatever goes on inside of those pages. But yeah, if whether we're thinking the physical book itself straight through to the industry and how that functions, and then the actual physical, the physical work of the book, I guess, of actually writing and composing the words that end up on the page, it's a huge number of people. And I really think that a lot of people, I don't even know if I really know how many hands really go into making a book. But so from the position that I'm in the industry, I guess, I work mostly with the content of the book and the contracts and the money that kind of surrounds the project. So in terms of the people that I interact with every day, well, obviously it starts with my authors. So I would say that every author that I work with has a different process, and most of those processes are also not solitary, especially the ones that are effective. I would say that most authors, they might bang out a rough draft on their own, but even from the point of view of creating a story or developing a concept, I mean, a lot of them have extensive training. So they have gone to a lot of workshops, or they've done I don't know, some of them have done a college program or university program. But even in terms of the immediate day-to-day of the writing, a lot of them work with coaches, a lot of them work with writing groups, critique partners, even beta readers, which is just the fancy word for the friend you send your work to. I would say that a lot of books have been seen by dozens of people before I even lay eyes on them. I laughed a lot listening to the episode of the podcast where you talked about querying me and how nerve-wracking that was, because I don't usually get to see that side of it. So it was really fun. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, I tell people that I want things to be revised before I get them, even if they're clients who I've worked with for a long time. So, I mean, I'm by far not the first person to lay eyes on most people's rough drafts, and I shouldn't really be, that's not really my job. But so yeah, by the time I get it, it's usually any manuscript or like a rough draft of something has usually been seen already by like a dozen people. But from me, I work with my authors one-on-one to like edit and refine the projects. It depends on the project that they're working on. If it's something that's like more conceptual or a nonfiction thing, then we're going to be doing like a proposal together. If it's like a traditional novel, then we do a couple of rounds of revision of the entire text. So there's usually...
Do you bring in outside editors, or are you doing the editing portion of that as well?
Yeah, so I do the editing portion of that at Westwood. Every agency kind of has like its own process. So before, when I worked at the Rights Factory, they have a lot of outside editors that they work with. And I was super, super lucky there because I got to work with like such amazing editorial staff that complemented my work. At Westwood, we all work individually. So the trade-off is that we have like amazing support staff. So I actually have time to do that work myself. Whereas before at the Rights Factory, most of the agents are doing their own kind of like accounting and things like that. And so they have other responsibilities that take up their time, and some of that editing gets shared. It's just sort of like a different balance of responsibilities, I guess.
May I also interject to demystify for the dear listener, when we're talking about editing, I think when people start, they believe editing means, you'll fix my spelling or grammar or
oh gosh, no, I
wish. What we're talking about is the substantive structure of the story and how the heart of the thing you're making lands with the reader. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of editing. So the stuff that I do tends to be the more developmental pieces. So going through, I have like a template that I use for editing that has like different sections, and I mostly just fill it out every time that I'm working on a different project. So it has like a section for like voice, so like how the tone and like the authorial voice of the author is coming through, character development, structure, pacing. There's a section for like plot and pitch, which is mostly for me to be able to like brainstorm how I'm going to try and sell the book later down the line, but also to refine like if there are plot holes or if there are things that, especially for like a bigger project, sometimes I think the whole story is in the author's head, but we have to make sure it makes it to the page too. Right. Yeah. That kind of stuff. And then, like market sensitivity kind of things. So like anything that might be like alienating to a reader or might turn somebody off, we try and like make books as inclusive as they can be. Loose ends, which is like the last little fiddly section at the end, is where I throw like all my grammar notes and like whether or not the ending kind of lands well. Like every book should be satisfying at the end. So if I feel mad at the end, that's where I tell people about it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's more of like a broad strokes kind of process. And then we leave like the copy editing and line editing is really more or less the responsibility of the author. Some of them work with professional like copy editors or line editors to really clean up the manuscript if they like don't have the time or resources to be able to do that on their own before we take it out on submission. And then that all will happen again once the book gets acquired by an editor at the publisher. So yeah, once it gets handed off from me, once it's been acquired by a publishing imprint, then there's like a whole other swarm of people that get involved. The editor that acquires the book generally is the one who will be working most closely with the author. So they do like a whole other round of, usually by then it's not super substantive editing. It's more like making sure that line by line, the writing is perfect and the plot is flowing the way it should. Sometimes there's some structural things. It sort of depends on the kind of book it is or the kind of project it is. World building obviously is like a big one for anybody doing genre kind of work, like really making sure that everything is consistent throughout the book and makes sense and is translated well to the author. And then marketing and publicity come in, and they also have a hand in sort of shaping like different aspects of the narrative. Sometimes they definitely have a huge hand in like how the book is displayed and the cover, how it's pitched to the reading audience. So all the jacket copy, the blurbs, the advertising, even down to the little details of like which, blog gets to host the cover reveal.
Forget about it. This book is not for you.
I'm just interested because with a background of like graphic design and illustration, if it's my book, when it's getting to that stage and the publisher marketing team is making those decisions and choices, how much do I as the creator get to jump in and be part of that conversation, and how much is just them deciding it for me?
Yeah, it varies so wildly between imprints. Sure. It's so intense. Like I've definitely had some I should say overall, my experiences have been really good. I know that people come in with horror stories of like, oh my God, they made this cover and it was awful and I hated it and it was never what I wanted. Like that definitely does happen. But in my experiences, it's been positive. And I think part of the reason for that is that Westwood has sort of a like standard contract clause that we always negotiate, that the author gets at least approval over the cover and like the jacket copy on the book. And usually I feel like usually once the editor and the imprint have committed to that, then they're more open to a consultative process because they don't want to get to a point where they've done all the design and then you come back and say no. You know what I mean? They'd rather have it be like a collaborative process, like right from the beginning, because it's much easier to backtrack from there than it is to come in and have to change the whole thing right off the bat. But I would say like overall, it depends in some to a certain extent how involved the author wants to be as well, because obviously like you as an author with a like graphic background, you're going to have like way more of an interest in the design of the book and the cover of the book than say somebody who like has no sort of like visual background at all and has only ever done prose. But I would say that all authors typically have like a strong feeling, at least once they see, if they didn't before they see the cover, they always do after they've seen the cover. And I would say that most imprints that I've worked with have been pretty collaborative. So I think the toughest part is that there are so many people involved. So you end up like having, you know, the editor, in my experience, will come to the author and me and say like, okay, what are your kind of like ideas for the cover? This is sort of what we've been talking about. But they have on their side like a whole team of people that they're working with from like marketing and publicity and also their art department. So like the editor's job in that case is really to network like between all of those different teams to make sure that, you know, you end up with something that the author feels like is accurate to what's going on in the book, but also, you know, marketing and publicity need to feel like it's eye-catching and need to feel like it is trendy and stands out amongst other books on the shelf. And then it really depends like what their budget is and what their capacity is at their art department too. So there's a lot going on there. And
actually sounds like a really fun art department to work in. Like,
yeah.
covers for books all day. That'd be fun.
Totally. And it's interesting because some art departments have, you know, like in-house designers that do all of their covers, and some of them use freelancers for almost everything. So sometimes it'll be like an issue of like, okay, here are our cover designers and here's like what they think about this book. And then sometimes it's like, okay, we have this idea, so we need to go find someone who can do this for us now. And so they're like literally browsing Instagram to like find, you know, artists being like, oh, this one looks kind of cool. Like, I wonder if they're available. Do they have an agent? Like, it really depends on the project and on the imprint. And then like as an added layer of complexity on top of all of that, it also depends what the printer is physically capable of. So what printer they've booked time with and like what their timeline is for revisions, because once something goes to the printer, there's no real going back after that. And these days, because there's such shortages in supplies of like certain kinds of paper also and certain kinds of ink, like that also restricts what artists are capable of designing in terms of book covers, because, you know, like some colors are going to really pop on a certain kind of like glossy fancy paper, but if, you know, there's none of that paper that exists to purchase, then we can't put it on a book cover. So there's a lot going on.
At what point does the book rep show up in that process? At what point is, you know, smaller presses that I've worked with, they'll have a person who then goes and is in a room somewhere shopping that book to distribute.
Oh yeah, like the salespeople. So they usually come in, I want to say like the tail end of that process. So they usually get to see like, because they're part of kind of the marketing side, they usually get to see like drafts of the covers and things like that. I don't actually know how much input they get because those conversations don't really happen like with the author present most of the time. They usually happen
in
like,
my experience, they don't have input so much
yeah,
as they have
exactly.
a demand for show me everything. No, don't show me that. We don't want to show them that. Oh, we
exactly.
do want to show them this. Oh, if you're done, but you're not sure the ending.
Exactly.
Make it sound vaguely finished.
That's it. Yeah. So they usually come in like once the cover is like, you get kind of a mock-up of the cover. And once that mock-up has sort of been greenlit, then I find that's when the sales department starts to get involved, because I think that they really shine when they know kind of, they can start thinking like, you know, they've read the summary of the book, they've seen the cover, and they can start thinking like, oh, I know this bookseller who's going to go wild for this, or like, oh, I know that this store is going to like, for example, if like they know that Indigo has, you know, a promotion coming up where they're going to do like a certain kind of like sideline sale. So like, you know, a promotional blanket, or like they're gonna go for like a cozy like autumn hygge theme in their stores, and they see a book cover that is like right in that theme, then it's a perfect opportunity for them to call up, you know, the people who are designing their front tables and say like, I have this perfect book that's going to look great with these products you're selling. Like, you definitely want to order this. So I think that like that's when they kind of start to like, that's when their brains start churning, is when they have like sort of not like the final product, but at least an idea of what the final product is going to look like and feel like.
You know, it's interesting. I had a little light go on, maybe a candle, a brief candle, a light in
A
my
little flicker.
Yeah. When people are using the expression, you know, oh, well, that just happened to arrive at the right time. I was in the right place at the right time. But
Yeah.
it's not like a one-to-one. It's not transitive property. It's a right time in every one of these instances. And I was making a little bubble chart of all the places that a book will go here. And there are at least 30 things on here
Oh my gosh.
where you'd
Yeah.
have to be in the right time at the right place to really, quote unquote, hit with
It's honestly bizarre. Like, the amount of publishing is like a relatively unregulated industry, and I'm not sure people really know that, but like there's a layer of like gambling and luck in publishing that is really like, even as a professional in the industry, it's super unpredictable. You never really know, like, and I think that especially since the pandemic started, like TikTok has really taught us that, which is like a really weird way to learn life lessons. But you know, like, you never really know like what's going to take off and why. And it really is, it's like a confluence of factors. Like, somebody sitting in an office somewhere has an idea that like happens to work with like some other idea that somebody is having like in another city in another part of the world. And if those two things just happen to line up, sometimes there's that magic, you know.
A number of years ago, my wife and I happened to be in Las Vegas, and we, by hook or by crook, wandered into a high roller area. And I guess we just had the right amount of bow tie and nice dress that we were allowed to get in it. And someone leaned over to me and they said, like, they noticed, they're like, well, you're not gambling. And I'm like, oh no, I gamble every day. I'm in publishing.
Exactly. Yep, it really is like that.
How do you encourage the author that is now just along for the ride? Like, there must be so often, not just you as an agent, but the peers of yours who are also agents. It must be so hard to receive an author's new work, feel so confident in it, and then this machine has its
knowing
way.
that the work has just started. The book is done. Everybody thinks that's it. The finish line is, you know, the end. But no, now the real work starts.
Honestly, like, I laugh every time someone sends me, because you know how everybody like titles their documents or their drafts or whatever, like final. And also every author, I think, like gets a thrill of delight when they get to write the end at the end of a draft. Like, and every time I'm editing a book and it has final in the document name and the end at the end, I'm like, oh friend, like the road, it's so long. You know, and people still want to do it because it feels good. But I think deep down, like, anybody who is in this industry knows that like that's really like, you know, knocking out that first draft, that's like the first step in like a very long journey.
It could be the end ?
Exactly.
The end?
Like, Gandalf has just knocked on your door at that point, you know.
Justin was asking before we started, we were sort of like brainstorming what are some of the things we want to talk about. And so he was saying, like, there must be a favorite part for you in this process. And actually, it's more Byzantine than perhaps anyone listening was aware at first. So, and now that we've laid out that map, maybe it's easier to talk about what are your favorite parts.
Oh my God, there are so many favorite parts for me. I feel like I'm one of those like horrible capitalists now, because when people ask me if I like my work, I'm like, I love my work. And it's not even a lie, but it's just like, it feels kind of dirty either way, because I always have to warn people all the time, like, I have to like sort of think of my work as separate from like the capitalist aspect of publishing, because they really are like like super intertwined, but also like there are real points of delight in the work that I get to do. And it doesn't always have to do with like the success of the project, if that makes sense. So I try to like celebrate the wins, even if, you know, they're not like translating into dollar signs for anybody, because I try not to make that the most important thing, even though it's obviously like an element of what I do. But the one thing, the best part that was the most surprising that I didn't expect when I first started agenting was getting cover drafts. Like there's something about working on a book for like months and months and months, because like even once I'm working with an author, it still feels very insular, you know, like it's just me and my computer and like the author sometimes on the phone or like sometimes by email. And we're just going back and forth, like sometimes over like the silliest things, like, you know, how to punctuate the title, or like, should we put a chapter break here? Or like, does this illustration go in this spot or like 3 inches higher? And like, we're just like really going back and forth over these like little details, trying to get everything perfect. And then, you know, we send it out into the world. It's like this weird, vulnerable thing for everybody. And then, I mean, I get like bajillions of rejections every day. So getting an offer on a book is always really exciting, but like it's more normal for me to wake up in the morning and be like, okay, rejection, 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 like filtering all the things, you know, just because like the math of like the industry, that's how it works out.
Let's unpack that moment. Right? I've often said
rejection moment or the offer moment. Okay.
Through my whole career, Justin and I, actually what we have in common, I think, and why we work well together and why we started working together, whatever, is that we often send out pitches, ideas, and things to lots of places.
Totally.
When we were starting out, collecting rejections was kind of our jam. Like,
totally.
you know, you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, which one said no today?
Yeah.
It's almost like a game.
But you know what? Sometimes like I get so much delight over like good rejections too. Like that's the weirdest part, is that
like
you have to
so
really
close, but not quite.
Yeah,
right?
or like just knowing that like somebody who you super admire, like from reading their rejection, you can tell that they like really thought about it and that they've offered you like really genuine feedback on a project. Yeah. I remember Fiona McRae, who is like, she has just retired, so I can't remember her exact title, but she's like one of the executive directors, if not the executive director, of like one of my favorite American imprints. And when she read one of my books for the first time and wrote me back this like thoughtful, sweet email with like great feedback, and like it was clear she had read like all the way to the end, I was just like I almost exploded. You know, it was so exciting because like even as a new agent, like trying to get the attention of somebody who's that busy is like really difficult, you know. And so to know that they like spent that time with your work is like so exciting. And I always try and tell the authors who I send those to as well that like it's a big deal to have people like that reading your stuff, even if it's, you know, not ultimately the right fit or whatever, but the fact that they actually took the time to go through it, because they don't for everybody. So it's, you know, even that can be really, really cool.
And I think I should share on the podcast that Emmy, you were that for me. You were one of the first agents that I ever reached out to, and you sent back a really nice, like heartfelt email about Dragon Nanny, and that you liked it, but it wasn't a right fit. And you gave me some advice, and it meant a lot. It was great.
Oh gosh, thank you.
Sandwiched between like just generic, almost robotic, like we're passing, you know.
Go away.
Yeah.
Go away.
You could tell there was another person at the end of your email, and so I thanks a lot for that. It was even though it was a rejection, it was a great rejection to get.
Oh, so. I'm glad. Yeah, I wish I could do that for every single author that submitted to me, because I so rarely, there's this stereotype that like agents get like bajillions of terrible queries, and that's just, I mean, it is true that we get some terrible queries, but like I mean, it's often people right at the beginning of the process who just like have missed the mark. They just don't know what they're doing yet. You know what I mean? And in some ways I kind of want to write back to them too and just be like, you just need to research like a little bit more before you do this.
I like children.
For breakfast?
Never.
You've been on that great podcast, Shit They Don't Tell You About Writing.
Yes.
I've been listening to that a lot. You've had some great episodes on there, and that
oh my gosh, they're so really, wonderful.
Yeah, really opened my eyes to this whole process, and looking at my first queries and what I'm doing now after gaining knowledge from that podcast that's a great resource that I would recommend.
It is such a good resource. And Carly and Cece are amazing agents. Like anybody would be super lucky to have feedback from them. I think Cece was one of the reasons I started agenting in the first place. She worked with me at the Rights Factory when I first started, and she is just like such a brilliant author, and her I think that that has like really impacted her agenting work. She does incredible editorial work, and her feedback on that podcast is like, if I was querying, that's who I would want to hear from.
Absolutely.
And Carly is like, I mean, we joke that like she's flawless in the agenting world. I don't know how she accomplishes everything she does in her life. She's like, I swear if I didn't know her better, I would think she was like a robot. She's like a great mom, but she also has like amazing insight to offer, like, and she's closing amazing deals all the time. So I think like anything that she says is like goes in the Bible for me, the agenting Bible.
After I read The Prestige and then saw the film, I became convinced that everyone I admired probably was two people, and they were all playing this game of being, spoiler alert, of being two people.
Yep.
Right? Of being one person, two people playing one person.
Absolutely.
In the query process, I think it's also bears discussing that if you get a really scathing like feedback, which sometimes I've gotten, one time or another, there will also be something that feels like it must be a lie. The all important phrase, you know, they've ripped your manuscript apart, and then it'll say, but please submit again.
No, I never say that unless I mean it, because
And
I
like
will.
you mean it. This is what I'm saying. It feels like a lie, but in every case that I've ever gotten over myself and been like, okay, they didn't like it, F them, I'll never talk to them again. Instead, I'm like, well, they gave me a direct instruction.
I think every agent does that precisely once in the beginning of their career to someone who they didn't really genuinely mean it to, and then you never do it again because inevitably the author that like you invite to submit to you again, who you weren't really feeling and you're just saying it to be nice, they'll send you like 84 more manuscripts in the next 6 weeks. So no, I only ever say that if I really mean it to people. And I also like, I try to tell people too, when, you know, the decision I'm making is not because of them. Like sometimes it's just that I don't have like the network of editors that they need to sell their book. Do you know what I mean? And so like sometimes I'll try and say to them like, you know, I can try and recommend to you other agents that would be a better fit, because it's not always that, I mean, frequently it's not that I don't like the project that I'm reading. It's just that it's not like the right thing for me. So sometimes like within Westwood, we share queries, but also like there's only 8 of us or something like that. So like we don't have an agent that represents everything. Sometimes I have to refer things out too. So.
And anyone playing the bubble game, the web game of who touches your manuscript, even the sharing queries, right?
Oh, we do it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
This is another part of that web that lots of people might have seen and had an opinion on the work.
That's
before.
true. And also like there's a flip side to that, which is that if you send something to an agency and you are rude to somebody or unprofessional, or your work is like really like they tell you that there are things to work on and they send you away to like work on those things and then come back, chances are good if you submit to another agent at that agency like the next day, it's also not going to work because we do like talk to each other as humans.
I told them to work on it again for a couple of weeks before they ping and it shows up as
exactly
the inbox, right?
Yep.
And
you also never know, I think you never know who's screening the queries also. Like at Westwood, we rotate around depending like who has time and stuff, but it's not just the agents who read the queries. Like many of my senior colleagues have assistants who also, you know, like part of their admin work will be to go through our slush pile or to go through our submission inbox and kind of pick out things they think are promising or might be a good fit, because like we get a lot of queries that aren't addressed to one person in particular. And so, you know, somebody has to decide who's going to read that and consider it. And oftentimes it's just whoever has time. So
is that day exhausting or like exhilarating? Because like you're looking at somebody's like dream, right? But like dream after dream after dream, you can imagine the potential, right? Like you've seen this whole process from start to finish. You can envision where it could go. But is that draining after a day of seeing all these potentials?
Oh yeah. And I have like the world's biggest emotions. So I find it's like a roller coaster, like, because also the worst is when I love something and I know I can't sign it. Like it happens not all the time, but like not infrequently either, that like I'll read something. It happened. Okay. I can give like a concrete example because it happened recently that someone who I had met through a conference submitted to me their manuscript and they were one of the organizers. And I thought like, I was so humbled that they would submit to me, because they had also like invited me to participate at their event. So they asked like, would it be okay if and I was like, yes, please. Like that would, anyway, I read their book, and having participated in their event, I also knew that they were like amazing at marketing, knew the industry really well, like were really nice. Like, I knew all this extra stuff about them that I don't usually know about an author before I consider their query. The book was brilliant. Like I listen to a lot of my queries on audio while I'm like driving and stuff. And
Oh,
so
right.
obviously not visual ones, but yeah, like the like novels and things, that's like 90% of how I screen queries.
Whoa, back up. That sounds like magic. How is that?
I use like it's called Voice Dream. So it's like a text to voice app, and I just load manuscripts in there, and you can pick like different voices from there. It's a like an accessibility app. So it's mostly used by people who are visually impaired. And so they have like a massive library of voices. You can change like the speed and the tone and the pitch so that like you can hear it best. And yeah, you can pick like accents from all over the world. Some of them are even like monster voices or like children's voices. Like it's super hilarious. And so yeah, I just like plug them into my car, and if I'm like running errands or whatever, I find, because otherwise sometimes if I sit down and just read for a long time, then I do get like too in my head about it, right? And I want to be able to read it like as though I'm like reading a book, like as a reader, just for fun, to like see, is this something like I really like, or is it something that my like logical brain is kicking in?
This is funny because Justin and I do this in a kind of a tangential way. When we watch movies in the studio, or we're recommending movies to each other, if we put on a film while we're working, like working on pages, trying to crush pages, and we're stuck looking at the film,
yes,
we know it's so good that we should watch it later, and we'll switch.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you can kind of do anything you were going to do, and it's just there, then maybe it wasn't for you. It doesn't speak to us, not every film or every piece of art is for every person. But I guess that's one way in which you're filtering like the thing that just reaches into your busy day and shakes you and says, no, pay attention to me.
That's it. And also, like, honestly, I just wouldn't, like, I read pretty fast on the page, but like I just wouldn't have time in my life. Like I think I get like 30 or 40 queries a week in like a normal week. And like I don't obviously request all of those, but even if I request like 2 or 3, like it would be a lot to read 2 or 3 books from start to finish every
2
week.
or 3 a week times 52 weeks is like, it's 104 books.
It's too many books.
I'm freaking out for you right now. I'm sorry if I.
And they're not books that are done, right? Like they're books that need work. So it's different than just like chilling and reading a book. Like a lot of them, I mean, now and then you get ones that are really polished and perfect, but like that's not where they're even expected to be at that stage. So
Now for all the ways in which someone listening to this may have their anxiety triggered about like my precious thing is going through this big machine, I find some solace as you are talking about these processes that it's the last bastion of non-algorithmic selection.
Oh yeah, there's no algorithm.
Left to human media, right? Like,
oh my God, my life would be so much easier if there was an algorithm.
Right, easier. But would the taste refine in the wrong direction?
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, that's really the tough thing. Like I did a podcast interview recently with Jonathan Ball about my manuscript wish list, which is like a little out of hand. And he astutely noticed this as an author himself, that like my manuscript wish list is really granular. And part of that is because like it's so difficult to try and get across to people, at least for me, like what kinds of books you want to read, right? Like people can write anything. So trying to like pick out, and especially when like trying to pick out what you might like, but especially when people are writing things that are like, I really like things that are quirky and weird. And so I always sort of fear that like, if I narrow it too much, or if I narrow it in the wrong way, like someone's going to read it and be like, oh, I'm not going to send you that. But that might be like the super cool book that I've like been longing for, So yeah, it's a very personal process. It's super, like I get super excited and I also get super heartbroken. Like writing emails back to authors is like one of the most, I think, like taxing. Like sometimes it's really, really rewarding too, but it's also just, it takes a lot of emotional energy because like I've always, especially once I've requested a full manuscript, like I want to give people an idea of like why I'm saying no or why I'm saying yes, or often it's why I'm saying no, but like, here are the good things that I really liked that you need to keep for like next time or for the next agent or whatever. There's just a lot of factors to consider. And so it's impossible like to convey your entire thought process to someone, right? It's just, yeah, there's a lot going on in there.
We haven't spoken to anyone else for thousands of years. So we started talking to ourselves.
This makes me think of a couple of years before the event. Conor McCreary, Howard Chaykin, and I were invited to speak at the UCLA to talk about comic making and story structure and some things. And so you get kind of hot when you're invited in such grand company. You kind of are like, yes, I know a thing or two. Okay, on the at the UCLA, I'm so smart. We went out for dinner after, and I was gushing about certain projects that I liked or didn't like from other people. Like, this one is so brilliant, Howard. This one, you should check out this. And Howard Chaykin made a really distinct point that I've never forgotten. And he said, Gregory, I want you to remember that there's a difference between good and favorite.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So please recommend me only good books, not your favorites. Right? And you get into the habit sometimes of, if I like it, I want other people to like it. So I tell them it's good.
Totally.
As opposed to, this is my favorite and why it's my favorite.
And also, like, something I get asked to do query critiques a lot. So like, whether it's for events and we do them like live, or sometimes like for competitions, they'll have sort of like a first pages, like get feedback on your first pages or whatever. And I really like doing that, but I also really struggle every time with like whether people want feedback on whether or not the query is good and the writing sample is good as part of a query, or whether I think the book is good and whether like the writing is good. So there's like such a massive difference between like reading for quality and like me as a reader in my own life being like, do I love this? Do I not? Like, what do I like? And then like my brain as an agent being like there's like this selling switch that I have to turn on and off, right? Like, do I think this can be acquired and sell thousands of copies versus like, am I just in love with this? Are like two really different questions.
When I think more new writers and new people to comics, like they need to understand, like, you guys are kind of gambling. The amount of moving parts that we've talked about on this podcast that go into making a book, like taking a book from its final form to actually on the shelf. And I said final form with quotation.
Final.
Yeah. Like
final draft last.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like there is so many moving parts and a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of people's time and money involved in this process. So like you have to be really serious about what you're doing. You have to really want it. You need to be persistent. You need to redo the work and perfect it and do it over and over again. And I think a lot of people just kind of come at it with like a half-cooked idea and hope that they'll win the lottery, hope that they'll get picked up and published by a big publisher. And I think it's good that there's all these limitations and doorways that you have to be good enough to get through, to get to the next one. Barriers are here for a reason.
Yeah, you used a great phrase in discussing your own relationship with this process: points of delight. You have certain points of delight.
Absolutely.
I think for someone who is writing, the act of writing is a point of delight for them. And the idea that they would have a book one day that others could read is a point of delight. And I think that there are lots of strata, and you can dissuade me from this ridiculous notion if you so choose, but there's a strata in the publishing community where if you have talent and you have the point of delight of writing and you have that point of delight of having finished a manuscript, you can shop around to smaller, more boutique publishers and have that all-important point of delight, if that's all you want, of my book exists. Maybe you only have one book in you. And the idea of running this gamut is like a nightmare. There's still places, I think, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there's
Oh no, like
for that.
yeah, 100%. And I always tell people like, I mean, I realize the reality of the situation. Being an agent is playing a gatekeeping role, but I hate to think of myself that way because it makes it seem like I'm the only way through to publishing, you know, like I think one of the things that's like really great about publishing, like removing sort of like the traditional publishing framework, is that there are so many different platforms, you know, like I I want to see certain books on shelves at Indigo and Barnes and Noble, whatever. That's like the work that I do. But I do read queries sometimes that I'm like, this is not going to get picked up. Like from my perspective, at least, like I don't think this is going to get picked up by anybody. But like you should self-publish this, or you should bring this to an indie press because like there is an audience for this. It's just not like the thousands of people who are going to be like buying your book at an airport, like, and that doesn't make it a bad book. It just means that there's like a different platform that might work better for it. And it doesn't even mean that like, especially in certain genres, like I don't even know if traditional publishing makes sense. Like part of the reason I don't represent series romance is because like I really like reading rom-coms and things like that, but a lot of the best romance authors in the genre, and the readers will tell you this, are the ones who are self-publishing their stuff, and they churn out like a billion books a year. Like some of them churn out like 4 or 5 titles a year, like on like the Kindle self-publishing app or whatever, or Wattpad, or like any kind of platform, and they make like great money because they have a dedicated fan base and their books are like exactly what they want them to be. A lot of them work with like one specific developmental editor who's like a freelancer who they just like hire to edit their books with them. And like I don't know that like I want to mess with that.
Yeah.
Like that's a great business model if you're like happy doing that. Like there's nothing I can do as an agent to get you a publishing deal for 5 books a year. Like that's not going to happen,
Yeah.
So
Comes back
like,
around to that point of delight, right? They are delighted every time they release a new thing. And let's face it, if you're able to write 5 books a year and get them out in front of an audience, in 3 years, you're a much better writer than you were 3 years previous.
100%.
But
Yeah.
you're
And
just gonna get
also
better
like
and
if you
better.
have all those peripheral skills to like market it, like sometimes like there is no one better to market your work than you, frankly. Like an imprint might not know how to handle the work that you're creating, but you do. So good. Like keep doing that. Like everybody has their own path, I think, but there is this idea that like getting with a big 5 publisher is like the way to be. I think there's like a level of prestige to that, but it also means you have to sort of be like hitting certain benchmarks that like not all authors want to do with their work. Like not all authors want to write to the standards of, like an imprint that's catering to the mass market.
Why don't you do what you dream, Bastian? But I can't! I keep my feet on the ground! Call my name!
It's like that scene, I don't know, I'm dating myself here, but the ancient film, The Never-Ending Story, very classic,
My heart.
right? Where they go to the gate where the 2 sphinxes are, and the brave knight is riding up to it, and he's going to be tested, right? And they're watching him through the little telescope, and they're like, "Oh, that fancy armor isn't going to save you from what's coming." In a way, that's the critical process of publishing, right? All the fancy armor and the way you convince it, you have to arrive with a pure heart, with a good intention. And yeah, if you step back, if you have fear, if you hold back, you will be obliterated.
Yeah, but it can be.
Nobody's forcing you through that gate. You don't have to go there.
I think we've all been talking about too, like there's many different options when it comes to publishing. There is no one way to do it.
Yeah.
And I often find myself recommending to first-time authors to self-publish that first book, because the skills they're going to learn self-publishing that first book, by the time they're ready to talk to the big 5, they will have participated in so many of the steps and skills that they're going to need to like have a book published by HarperCollins or Scholastic, right? So I really like the experience of self-publishing. I feel a lot more like ready to deal with more professional publishers after going through that myself.
Yeah, a lot of people really don't understand the process of publishing, and definitely self-publishing will teach you that in like a really concrete way. But on top of that, like I think a lot of authors think that, once your book is acquired, like that's it. You like finish
No
the
more
book and
work.
they like handle the rest.
Yeah,
And like that is so not what
not at
happens.
all.
It's so much work. And like I have a couple of clients who are like marketing wizards. Like one of my rom-com clients, Kelly Olert, has taught me more about marketing a book than I could have ever learned on my own. She is just a super nerd about it. She's super keen. She does all the research. And like, I think that like she is having good success in her career because she has those skills, like she's also a brilliant writer, but like there are lots of brilliant writers. And to sell your book really, really well, you can't just rely on your imprint. You also, like in a lot of cases, they're relying on you too. So whatever kind of like your skills are, like they're going to make use of them.
Why don't you, just for the sake of the dear listener, name that author again and say where they can find them,
Oh
so they can
yeah,
pause and go look, and then they can do some reverse engineering. They can see how this person
absolutely.
is doing it, because I think that's of real value. If you see someone who you admire in the publishing space, and you try to go a layer deeper, like, okay, who is their agent? Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Who else does
absolutely.
their agent represent? Oh, what other books have been sold? What are the deals around that? And you can quickly find yourself in a position where you're like, oh, well, that's not the company I'd want to keep for this book or this idea. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
No, so Kelly is one of the authors I signed pretty early on. She's in the US. Her name is Kelly Ohlert, Ohlert, and that's like her social media handle too. Her debut rom-com is coming out in a year, so December 6th, 2022, and it's called To Get to the Other Side, and it's about a rescue chicken, and it is the most heartwarming book in the entire world.
I love it.
It's so good. And actually, like Kelly's story is one.
Rescue chicken. What is
Yeah,
it?
it's in the beginning of the book, the main character finds a chicken wandering lost in the streets of Chicago, and the book goes from there. And it's based on a real chicken whose name is Chick Chick, and Kelly occasionally posts pictures of her, so you can also see pictures of the chicken who inspired the book. The chicken had its own little wheelchair, which also makes an appearance in the book later down the road. So it's, there's a lot of good going on in that book. But I love her story because I signed her for a totally different book. We took it out on submission, and both of us were like relatively confident, but we did a small submission because we were like, to me at least, it felt like there was something that wasn't quite perfect about it yet, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Kelly had worked really hard, so I was like, let's take it out and get some feedback and see if other people feel this way too. And so we did, and we got some good feedback. But rather than keeping on going with that submission, Kelly was like, no, we're going to do a different project. And I was like, okay, pitch me something. And she ended up pitching me this book. And I was like, this is the one, Kelly. Like, this is going to be the one. And sure enough, like it wasn't her first project that got acquired. It was the second one. And now she's like, we're, working toward all kinds of other things, but she's super excited to have her debut novel being published in a year. So
yeah, and the great part about that story too is you couldn't get to the second book if you didn't write the first book, which means
definitely
you need
not.
to just get your butt into the chair and get some writing done. And that doesn't mean write all day. That doesn't mean quit your day job. That means
no, she has a day job and 2 children. She's a superhero. She's one of those people. Like, I mean, I think lots of authors are those people, but like she writes, like in the evenings after her kids go to bed. She writes like on her lunch break. She like listens to audiobooks while she's doing the laundry. She's like she really has like a passion for the stuff that she's writing, and I think it brings her a lot of joy to like be able to fit that into her life the way that she does.
As you made that checklist of how she manages her day, I was like, yep.
Exactly.
You were yep.
Listening to queries in the car. We all do it. Yeah.
Emmy, I know you have a huge pile of queries to get through. I know you have a lot going on all the time. So thank you so much for carving out this little piece of time to demystify.
Oh gosh, no, it's so fun.
All the hands that went into getting a book. This has been Super Pulp Science.
Can I just say we've like very barely scratched the surface.
Yeah. Heconcheres, I don't know if that's how you're pronouncing it. It's a Greek word that means the 100 hands, right? The 100-hander monster. That is published for sure.
Yes.
This has been Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. This is Gregory Komichik encouraging you to write books, make comics. Thank you so much, Emmy.
Anytime.